All right, you guys. So today's guest, his name is Arno Koch. He is a father of two, doggy dad, and a husband. Lives here in California. We actually met very creatively, and we'll go over that in the episode today. But just to give you a little bit of a rundown on this gentleman, he started out in an international corporate career as an engineer in Germany, then a product manager in Switzerland, and in corporate development here in California. Now, Arno became a professional business coach in 2018, and coincidentally, his first business clients were actually struggling in their relationships, which actually began to thrive again over the course of Arno's coaching programs. And well, with the added benefit of helping clients overcome bulimia, phobias, and PTSD, recognizing this pattern and considering his own transformation, Arno began to focus on elevating and healing relationships and has remained passionate about it ever since. So without further ado, here's the episode of DGU Podcast and Arno Koch.
But yeah, man, this is fun shit. It was it's always very funny whenever you first start out, especially into a video session, especially to go ahead and get the audio situated. And I swear it's the biggest issue, the biggest problem that you ever go through whenever you're doing this type of, I don't even know what you call it, like this world of entertainment, if you will.
And it is, right? I was guesting on a couple of podcasts, and I was like, "How am I supposed to call this the section on my website?" And at some point, I called it podcast appearances, and I thought that sounds funny, so I changed that to in the media.
That's funny. Okay.
Because
Yeah.
technically that's where I am right now, because
Yeah.
we're broadcasting.
Absolutely, dude. Yeah.
Everybody's invited.
It's funny because like a lot of people try to be so politically correct, and I just like to keep it simple for stupid. That's honestly how it goes. Like, there's no need to overly complicate something. If the more you have to overly complicate something, the more I don't want to have anything to do with it.
Yeah, and the more jargon you use, the less people get it or want to get it, even, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's some people that I've spoken with, like let's say like your physics people, quantum physicists, whatever you call them, years ago, back in 2019, that I spoke with, that were talking about like all of this shit. Like, I don't even know, like, I didn't go to school like that, so I have no idea what they're talking about. And I'm like, dude, like, can you just break it down for me, like, very, like, to where you're talking with like an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old? Like, imagine that's who you're trying to explain this stuff to. And he finally broke it down what he was talking about, and he was talking about sound waves, how sound waves help um will help the growth and temperament of plants and our biology, like the kind of like sound waves helping us move. And that's what he was trying to explain, but he said it in not that way. He said it in a total like scientific way, and I was just like, bro, like right over my head, straight up, all day long.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't
yeah,
like
it's
it.
funny. Yeah, and it's true. I mean, we can use sound waves to make each other move, right?
Yeah, it's funny because it's funny how alike we are to plants. I whenever I found this, whenever I discovered this initially, it was one of those things to me that I was blown away. Like, genuinely, I was fucking blown away because I'm just like, dude, like, how is this even possible? But if you kind of like simplify it all for yourself, and you understand that, okay, as humans, like, we listen to music, right? For certain people like myself, I perform better, like in sports, I perform better if I have earphones in with whatever it is that I'm doing.
Hmm.
And like, it's the same thing if you're driving in a car and you're going on a long road trip or something, or just going around town, and you're going into the gym, and like, you're getting pumped up, you have your amp up music and all this stuff, and you also have your chill music. And I found that out, and I was like, dude, like, it's the same shit all day long, to where, music motivates you. Music is a drug. that it's a sound wave drug that, it does move us in very various of ways, which is amazing. I don't know. I thought it was very, very insane whenever I was able to put like from humans to plant-based things, and I'm like, what the hell is going on here? It was like, dude, it was really like, I laughed as well because I thought like this has been in the front of my face the entire time. Like, why am I just figuring this out?
My grandma told me that she was talking to plants, right? And as a kid, I was like, ha ha, that's funny.
Yeah.
But if you look at that orchid behind me,
Yeah.
this is the third time that orchid is blooming.
Okay.
And whenever it stops blooming, I cut off that piece, and then it immediately sprouts anew. And there are people who have orchids, and they just die and
Yeah.
wither and stuff. And I speak to that orchid once in a while.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
So I think we vibe.
It's funny because my wife, she has some plants in the house and everything. And there's one, I don't even know what it's called, but she has a plant downstairs that she's like, she calls it a dramatic bitch, basically. Like that's what she calls it.
That's
I'm
right.
like, why? Like and because whenever this plant doesn't get water, it's weird because it just sags, just falls down. And then once she gives it water, then it's just like up and enjoying life. And it's the craziest thing to even think about whenever you're talking about just plants being temperamental.
Now quickly that can go. I had
Dude,
a
yeah.
a pomegranate tree that was in a big wine barrel, and I
Mhm,
wanted to get those wine barrels out of the way when we moved here.
mhm.
So I took that pomegranate, and I wanted to replant it. And while I was right in the middle, my wife called me for dinner, and I was thinking, if I do that now, I'll probably forget about it, and then that thing will die. So, but my wife was calling, and I'm a relationship coach, and I like to listen when she calls because I know how
Yeah.
frustrating it is when you make dinner and the people you cooked it for take their time. So I went inside, and we had dinner, and I forgot about it. And the next morning, I was like, oh crap. Okay, so I went outside, planted that pomegranate tree, and it lost all its leaves. And I left it where it was for a week or so, and it had lost its leaves. And I was like, okay, then I'm gonna trash it if it chose to die. Okay, so I put it in a trash can, and the thing filled the whole trash can. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna cut the branches to cut it down a little bit to have a little more space in the trash can. And I cut two branches, and I was like, that thing is alive. So I took it out of the trash can again, put it back into where I planted it and watered it, and sure enough, it sprouted again and it's alive. And
Yeah, that's
it's
pretty
really
insane, isn't it
interesting.
though?
Yeah,
Like whenever you
absolutely.
take, because I had to learn that whenever I did cannabis, when I was cultivating cannabis, and I had to learn about all that stuff as well. And I learned the hard way by trial and error, straight up. So, but yeah, you talked about some stuff. I know on our first call that we had, I know I called you just out of the fucking blue, just out of the blue.
Yeah, that
And
was fun. I really enjoyed that.
yeah, dude, and it was funny because the one of the things that stood out to me on that phone call was just like uh you had said about, we're talking about being so universal, and that's what this podcast is about, is being universal, a universal being. But then, you started going into a lot of other crazy stuff, and then you even asked like, so what do you look for? Like your first question to me was like, well, what do you look for in a guest? And then we just started hitting it off, and I was like, you're like, the more you spoke freely, like just freely, I'm like, dude, like this is exactly what we look for. Like this is what I want. Like just, not the yes and no's, just bring it out. Like,
Yeah, we got to be careful. This could be a 3 hour podcast, right?
dude, hey, if it is that way, it's, hey, it's fine with me personally, but I know like you have a life as well, so I know that it's kind of one of those things. But so how is it that you really got into what it is that you're doing now? You're a relationship coach, right?
Yeah, so personal development was always a big thing for me. I always enjoyed personal development. I read my first book on personal development when I was 15 years old. And I mean, I think most people go into personal development because of either hardship or aspirations. And for me, it was my parents clearly loving us kids, clearly loving each other, but never having had a concept of handling conflict amicably. That's what I call it today. So
Mm.
there was always yelling, blaming, shaming, guilting. Uh, the word divorce was on the table, usually brought up by my mom. Us kids were physically disciplined, um, and just just no way of handling that. In German, it's called Streitkultur, having a conflict culture, and that didn't exist. And I remember sitting in the living room between my parents, mediating arguments they had, um, in that fear that they would follow through with that divorce threat, and also realizing whatever they're doing, it's not working, it's not leading anywhere. And that's what got me into it. And then I always followed personal development. There were great books like Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman that I read a couple of times, and other books. And then when I started my career as an engineer of all things, at that point I was passionate about personal development, but I didn't see any way to make that a business. I didn't want to become a therapist. That didn't sound appealing to me personally, although many of them do a fantastic job. And I became an engineer. And when I entered my first company, that was the first time I got in touch with coaches, business coaches, corporate trainers, and I loved their seminars. The company offered those, so I attended those seminars. I was like, I would love to do that at some point, but I didn't see how again. And then I advanced through a bit unusual through my corporate career. So I was an engineer working on a kitchen appliance that we produced, and then I got curious into selling that. So it was so direct sales. So I started selling that, going into households, cooking for people. And as I was the only person doing both, then at some point the marketing department needed a new product manager, and they had heard about me, and they were curious if I was interested in doing that. So I moved to Switzerland, became a product manager, and as I was doing that, pretty quickly the head of marketing talked to me about launching the U.S. sales division and asked me if I liked America, what my thoughts were. And I did, and I always had this idea of spending some time in the U.S., sometime at least a couple of years. Wanted to have that experience. Um, and when that happened, when that transition took place, and I was one of the first people here, um, I trained the customer service team here together with another corporate trainer, and I enjoyed that so much. That was the funnest thing I've ever done in business. Training other people. I don't know why I got so much kick out of it. Um, and then when I was done with that, um, I was like, how can I do that outside of the corporate world? And through connections, I facilitated a one day workshop at the University of Phoenix. A friend of mine found 10 people that were interested, and I was curious, am I able to do that on my own? And I did, and it was fun. So when my expat contract ended and I would have been able to go back to Switzerland, I said, no, I'm going to stay here. I want to be a corporate trainer. I want to be a coach, um, because this is just where my passion lies. And then as I started as a coach, started out as a business coach, and the first people I worked with all had problems in their relationships. Well, again, the word divorce was on the table. And by the end of the program, they were happily in love again. I was like, how did that happen? We didn't work on relationships. Their partner was not even involved. What is going on here? And what I realized was I had them practice all the tools and strategies with their partners, because it's not about divulging knowledge, right? The person needs to change their behavior. Only then they've learned something. And I wanted them to practice as much as possible. And the spouse was always around. So I had them practice the stuff with their spouse. And as they did that, the relationship grew. And then I was like, I'm gonna try to niche down and help people with problems in their relationships and see how that goes. And great results right off the bat. And that's what I'm passionate about.
So this is something that, like, whenever you're doing these, what you were just talking about of how you're coaching these people and then it translated to their spouses. Do their spouses come with them, or this is something that they practice outside of the coaching?
That practice that outside of the coaching. I usually
Interesting.
work with individuals and their partners are not even involved in the coaching. Some people then bring their partners on board, and everybody's welcome to bring their spouses in if they're interested. But I make very clear that the process is about them. And the
So this
idea
is something
behind,
that they
yeah,
actually did practice on outside of the coaching, and then once they came back for the next their next session,
yeah,
then it's like they kind of just like took this away from your first session, took it back home, implemented it, came back, and it's like, hey, I actually did this with my spouse, and this was the outcome. Let's learn more. Is
yeah.
that kind of how it went on?
So yeah, they practice it, they come back, and then I add the next layer and the next layer and the next layer, go back to the first layers to make sure it's still happening. Um,
That's what
and
people. This is what people hope for. Like with people that are in your position, and that like whenever you're coaching people, that's what people like yourself, like I would imagine, hope for, that the people that you're really teaching and yeah, coaching is doing, like they're just not just going through one ear and out the other. It's one of those
yeah,
things that they're actually going back home and they're implementing it, like these self-help books, like
yeah,
what you were talking about of going into these personal development books. It's the same thing. It's like, you people write these books. It's one thing for you to be able to go ahead and read it. It's another thing for you to go ahead and implement it. And
yeah,
what you're describing right now is people literally going ahead and taking in what you stated and then implementing it into the real world.
yeah, yeah.
Very
And I thought about it. I was like, how can I get people to get the most out of the coaching? How can I help people implement as much as possible? And the only way is to practice. So there are two things. One is have them practice as much as possible with their partner, and now with the relationship, it's automatic. But I also tell them to practice those things with their kids because again, it's about communicating effectively, and you can do that with everybody.
Yeah. So this whole
There
thing
is no,
really inspired. It sounds like this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this whole thing kind of like inspired you as a kid, like as a wee one, and then you just, as you got older, it's like you kind of, it's like something that was always subconsciously back there, and then once you got into your career, it's like, shit, like I've been going through this. I know how to get through it and help others get through that, right?
yeah. Yeah, or I had the perception of doing that, right? As a
Yeah,
kid, I don't know how much my influence really was. It was probably negligible, right? I mean,
yeah,
I'm so compassionate for everyone who blames themselves for their parents' divorce
mhm.
because I would have. I felt I had an impact, and I would have felt that like I had failed if they hadn't gotten divorced. But it was an inkling that happened at that time,
Yeah.
100%.
Relatability is a very big
Yeah.
deal in that space for sure. Like it's I really feel bad, like immensely bad. Like I can't, like the word, my feeling of like sorrow and sympathy and empathy for the couples that do get divorced. I really do feel for, because I don't live that way myself. There is, that word does not evolve, or yeah, does not even evolve into in my household at all.
Hmm.
And for anyone that does go through a divorce and whatnot, it's like, I would never want that for myself. I would never want that for anyone else. You always want to be able to find that person that you can always kind of relate with throughout life and grow together. And so for anyone
Yeah.
that does go through those pains, I literally can't even imagine what that would be like, because I've never been through it myself. And God forbid, I would never want to go through that in my life. So I can only imagine what type of pains and tribulations and testing that would go on the personal side, like within your own self, whenever that does happen.
And it became even more intense when I had my children. And then speaking with clients, or speaking with people on the phone who went through that in the past, and seeing how that affects those people as grown-ups. Because I would say 90% of the people that I talk with on the phone, not necessarily who become clients, but people that I talk with on the phone, have gone through a childhood where that happened, and then they just reenact the childhood because it all becomes unconscious, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it's now about reprogramming that unconscious mind of the person. And how do I do that? How do I access that unconscious mind? And one thing is having them do things, right? As you having all senses involved. They had their auditory senses involved. They have now so the ears, now they talk like that, auditory again. They have a kinesthetic experience of it. They see how they feel different as they do that, right? And do those things. And then the other thing is repetition. Repetition is so important as well. So I realized that in my coaching goals, I was repeating myself over and over and over again, telling everybody the same stuff that I learned, that I'm using on a daily basis, most of it unconsciously now. So I created a video course for my clients, and they can go through that video course at their own pace, outside of the calls, and watch and rewatch those videos to really create those changes. Because as they rewatch, when you watch a movie, you retain like 20 to 30%, or if you read a book, you retain 20 to 30%.
Yeah,
or
that's
listen to a book.
With a book.
So for me, it's a lot more powerful to listen on Audible to audiobooks and re-listen, because it's hard for me to reread books. It's easier for me to re-listen to books. So I do that, and I give people the videos so they can watch the videos, or even just listen to the videos to ingrain that stuff. And that really brings things home.
What do you find helps people more, or is it just kind of one or the other? Like, because I know that some people are visual learners, some people are able to really take things in, like you said, like with an audiobook. Some people are able to take that in more than reading a book, and some people can't do either one. They have to actually see it and hear it, like see it, like you and I are doing right now. Like I'm looking at you talking with me, right?
Yeah.
So what have you found that people really enjoy more? Like, yeah, what do you, or I guess might work better with, I guess.
I think it's complementary. And the videos are definitely very powerful. There are people who only come to the calls, talk with me, and mind their own business after that, and then talk with me again. Those people see less results than those that really watch the videos and rewatch the videos. Because in those videos, I really thought about doing everything really succinct, and one builds on the next. So that is where people log into the course, and at some point speak with friends or family, and their family notices, the family members notice changes in the people. They're like, my mom told me that I changed. And that's the biggest compliment you can get, because your mom doesn't expect you to change. Your mom still treats you like a 16-year-old when you come back home, which is actually funny. I remember a moment when I was like 30 or so, and I was at my parents' place, and I was so angry that my mom treated me like if I was still living there, right? And then 5 minutes later, I asked her when dinner would be ready. Yeah, but it's but when your mom notices a change, or when your partner notices a change, and that's also part of effective communication. Hollywood teaches us there's a conversation, and then one partner goes like, "Huh, you're right," and then they change.
Yeah.
And that's not life. In life, you hear something, and then the change may come a couple of days later, if at all. So that you communicate it effectively doesn't mean that you get an instant result. The other person still needs to process and comprehend, and maybe hear it a couple of times, and a couple of different ways until a change takes place, until they choose to make a change, because they don't change on your behalf anyway.
Yeah, so basically, like you said before, repetition is a very big deal for people in general.
Yeah,
Like to be able to read
100%.
a book a couple or a few times, to be able to really take it all in, or watch a movie a couple or a few times, depending on what your rate of learning is or rate of perception is. That's like, I can relate with that one personally, to where it's like with listening to a book, it takes me a few times to read a book. Um, Movies, I'm all in, let's go, like straight up. And then but I'm a very big visual learner. So like, for example, I'm a big gearhead, right? So gearhead, do you know what that term is?
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So I like to work on a lot of my own stuff, like cars and trucks and whatnot. And so, for example, we have a commuter vehicle, a Chevy Cruze, right? So it's just one that if I need to go wherever, like I'll probably use that if I'm going somewhere like repetitively, because it gets really
Mm-hmm.
good fuel mileage, especially in today's world. So I was working out in Irvine, right? And the car started like taking a shit, and I noticed it in the power band. Well, one thing led to another, and I had to get this thing done. I had to. So what I did was I looked up on YouTube, and I was like, okay, I got to figure out how to access this thing. And I literally just learned off of YouTube visually of how to take this thing apart. Never took it apart before, but I did build my truck as well, and I built some other shit in my past. So I'm like, it's not so far out of my learning capabilities and um my actions, you know. So went ahead and did that. My first turbo I ever changed out, and I had to take out the entire front end of the engine, and never did that before on that car ever. But now I did, and now I can go back, and I had to I had to do it like 2 times over again, because I didn't have a part here, or something happened here, or something broke here, and I had to go fix that. So yeah, I'm definitely one of those personally that's like a huge visual learner for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Same here with my first cars. My dad is an engineer and also a car mechanic, and we would do that together. And he would show me how that works, and I'd be hands on. And then also simple things. A couple of weeks ago, I got back into tennis, and
Okay.
and my tennis racket, the grip was completely destroyed. My hand was black after playing.
Yeah.
So I looked on YouTube on how to replace a grip band and stuff, or replace the grip band. And then coincidentally, when that happens, you run into people who need a new grip band on their tennis racket.
Yeah.
So yesterday I replaced the grip band on my brother-in-law's and my dad-in-law's tennis racket as well. And I think the biggest one was complete tangent. Bees. We have bees.
Okay.
We had a swarm of bees in our backyard about a year ago, and I did the most logical thing. I bought a hive and put them in.
It's the most logical thing.
I was like, huh, maybe we can get honey. And I had no ideas about beekeeping, right? And YouTube taught me beekeeping.
Yeah.
And April this year, we got 20 pounds of honey out of that hive.
Hey, are you using
It's
that for yourself, or are you selling it as well?
No, I'm using it for myself and giving it away. It's a great little gift. Everybody
Dude,
loves
everyone,
honey as a
especially if
gift.
it's local, it's like, hell yeah,
Yeah,
let's go. Let's
it's
get this
so
local pollen in my system all
yeah,
day long.
exactly. Everybody's so excited about it, and uh, and yeah, and then I had that beehive, and then I told someone about it. One of my favorite beekeeper jokes. You know how you know that someone's a beekeeper?
Mm-mm.
They tell you.
They just tell.
And it's true. So I told a friend, and he was like, "Oh yeah, my father-in-law has bees in his house, and he wants to get rid of them." And I'm like, "Well, maybe I can help him." So I helped him get rid of that beehive that he had, and I built a bee vacuum out of two Home Depot buckets to get the bees and save out of the hive and save the bees.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that didn't work very well with that hive. It was just a lump of dead bees. But I realized what I had done wrong when my hive was swarming. I was able to get that swarm settled and get it into the bucket alive and into a box. And then I called someone who wanted bees to take them home and make a new hive with them.
Yeah.
But yeah, YouTube.
It's crazy that you bring that up, though. You basically just brought up bee rescuing. Dude, so I'm from, I think I'm not sure if I mentioned this on our first phone call or not, but I'm from Dallas, Texas originally. And one of my friends, he has basically he has a friend that is that builds out companies, right? He just like creates stuff just because. And one of them is a bee service. And so I was talking with him earlier this year. I think it was earlier this year or last year about potentially doing one out here in California. And he was like, man, like I would totally want to do it with you. And I'm like, at this point, I'm at the point that I don't, it's very rare that I'll partner up with somebody in general with business. But long story short, it's crazy of how profitable bee rescuing is, because it filters from like the service of rescuing them. Sometimes people will do it for free, and other times you'll pay for it. You take that out, and then you take whatever is remaining there, and then you bring it to your safe space where you have all the bees, obviously. And then those bees join the current colony that you already have. Then they just make more honey. Now there's your first one. Your second layer of business is going to be selling the actual the honey, and then the whole business kind of like repeats itself. And before you know it, you go from like having this very small little thing to having this huge operation. Most of the time it's not even planned that way to where you're going to go into a huge operation. It just kind of happens that way. And then, like you said, you have people that want bees. That's another sale right there. So in a bee service, it's like you've got three forms of sales happening, three different revenue streams that are going on, which is just insane. I would have, if my buddy didn't have that friend, I would have never known about it. It would have never even been honestly like common sense. But understanding like from, how it's like kind of a rule, like it's always best to have the local honey, that if you're going to have any honey, have it from your local area, because you get the local pollen and all that into your system. And you're going to operate better because you've got the local stuff going on, the local ingredients that the bees are getting. Pretty impressive though.
Yeah, and it's funny, if I had more property here, I would now be my swarm, my hive swarmed twice. I'd be sitting on 3 hives now. No problem at all. Just getting new hives from Amazon for $200. I mean, it's and then you can sell the wax. You can even sell queens. There's a lot of stuff. I'm not doing any of that, but you can grow that business. It's definitely a business to grow. For me, it's just a hobby. Then you rescue bees, and yeah, if you're into bee rescuing, you can multiply hives pretty quickly.
Yeah, you can. It's really insane. Like there's a few over in Dallas that I'm aware of, and they make bank monthly, but then they're all in war with one another because they're Google ads, and they're like, oh, you're clicking my ad, you're making me spend $35,000 a month on ads, and they're literally like competing against one another. It's the craziest thing ever. Definitely not something that I would want to be in by any means, having that much animosity whenever I'm like trying to operate a business and I've got a competitor trying to come in and knock me out and try and spend way more overhead than I need to. Like, ain't nobody got time for that, man.
No,
nobody got time for that.
Because in the end there's enough market for everybody. There's enough market for local honey. I believe there's enough market for coaches, right?
Yeah.
Even if there were like 3-4 coaches right here in the area, one person resonates most with one of those. Right?
Yeah,
it's fine. It was interesting in the kitchen appliance business. Consultants were hesitant to bring other consultants on board, forgetting that the other consultant, first and foremost, advertises the appliance, gets the word out. Every consultant multiplies the revenue that one consultant can make. So but they try to create those silos and be all by themselves and get all the
Yeah.
revenue. No, I don't want another consultant here on the street. No, you freaking want another consultant on the street
Yeah,
anytime.
it's like you're taking my corner, bitch. Like, what's going on? Like, why are you
Yeah,
taking this is my corner? You don't
yeah,
let's back off my corner. Let's go.
exactly.
Gonna have some troubles going on in your life.
Yeah, yeah, and that mindset doesn't get you anywhere, right?
Uh-uh.
Yep.
No, it's one of those things that it's a self-sabotaging plan. Um, I've gone through this, and I know I'm very certain you've gone through this as well in your lifetime, is that when you have salespeople come in, specifically salespeople, though salespeople are like, I would say like the most like dog eat dog type of people that you can have, just because most of the time what's going to happen is that they're going to want their own self success. They're not going to want others to succeed with them. There's no with, there's only for you and your own. That's it. And I've noticed that with a lot of different companies that I've either worked with or had or whatever, like they're there's such a huge taboo protectiveness that happens with people, like new salespeople coming in, that you either don't want to help that person because you're afraid that they're going to be better than you, therefore making more money than you, and then like something of that nature will always happen. But it's the worst thing in the world, and that's one of the things that I kind of noticed with my last job that I had. That I was over in Irvine for. And it was like, you have people coming in, and like some people are very reluctant to help others because they want their own success. And they know that if you don't close that deal, then they're going to get that deal later on. And then they're going to have it for themselves. And I noticed that so too much. And even in my past as well, it's happened way too much, just of people trying to stomp on others' toes, when really what you should be doing is helping that other person get better, so then you can turn them into something bigger, and then you yourself get bigger because you amplified them. So everyone goes like this. It's not just this and then like that. It's everyone moving together. That's what people
Yeah.
in sales and in companies, that specifically in sales, that I've noticed that people fucking hate.
It's like back in the days when you play computer games, five dudes sitting together, and on a game like PlayStation Tekken or something like that, right?
Mhm.
And then there are two philosophies. The winner can keep the controller, and the loser has to pass the controller on, or the winner has to pass the controller on.
Yeah.
Of course, the winner has to pass the controller on, so the losers get better, and the whole team elevates and gets more and more fun and more elaborate, right?
Yep.
And I had a similar experience in engineering, where there were people who really built those silos and wanted to be the person everybody has to go to for the knowledge, right? And when I'm looking, actually, it's funny. I still have it here. I still have my folder, my my folder of my patents from my engineering days, right?
Holy shit.
Those and my philosophy was always to share everything. If someone asks me a question, I share everything. And in conversations, I learn from them. And those people who don't share with me, that only take, I will always be just a little bit ahead of those people too, because I'm constantly growing, and I speak with five
Yeah.
people, and five people give me responses. And
Yeah.
as I'm sharing, as I'm asking questions, sometimes I answer my own question by sharing with someone else that I would not have if I just sat at my desk.
Yep.
So having communication and tapping into other people's brain power is so powerful. And there was one guy in our company who the guy with the most patents. He was the top inventor, and he said something really striking. He said, "Most inventions are really discoveries,
Okay.
because humans don't invent things. We see how something works in this environment, and then we transition it into that environment, and then everybody's so proud of our invention." No, we
Yeah.
just used something. We did some transmutation. Is what we actually really did. And I do the same in coaching, for example. I get knowledge from relationship books, but most of the knowledge that I share is from other books. Like, for example, there's this guy, Chris Voss. Have you heard of Chris Voss, this FBI negotiator?
Yes, I have. I have heard of him. Yes.
Yeah. So one thing
I
that he
believe I
talks
have.
about, yeah, one thing that he talks about is empathizing, creating empathy and compassion with the freaking terrorists,
Mm.
right? And and what works with a terrorist works with everyone else as well, right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I'm not using this. I'm not sharing this with anyone because um, this is only for terrorists or something. No, you use that with anyone in any conversation with friends, your partner, your kids.
Yeah.
And one of the things he talks about is um, start your sentence with "It seems like, it looks like, it sounds like."
Yeah.
Especially because if you want to create empathy and you just tell the other person how they feel and they, hey Adrian,
Hey, how's it going?
good to see you, nice to meet you. So if you tell the other person how they feel and it's true and they like it, you're golden. But if you're just a
Yes.
little bit off, you break the connection.
Hmm.
And if you tell them how they feel and they hate how they feel, it breaks the connection as well. It's like, why are you angry? I'm not angry, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't work. So if you say, it seems like you're frustrated about something right now, now, first of all, you're not mansplaining their feelings to them. You show that you might be wrong.
Right.
You show that you put some effort in. I thought about it, I thought about it, thought about it, and it seems to me so and so and so. And instead of you're the problem because you feel that way, or I'm the problem because I perceive you feeling that way, no, you have a valid feeling about something that happened outside of both of us. Let's look at that. Let's
Yeah.
talk about that. And that's what Chris Voss talks about, what he does with the what he did with the terrorists. And it works perfectly with anyone, with a distressed partner, with a distressed kid. It even works through email and text.
I wish people learned that, dude. Arno, I swear to you, I wish people learned that. Like, because people come at me on LinkedIn. I was telling my love last night. I was like, man, I fucking hate LinkedIn. I hate it so much. It's very rare, Arno, that I get someone like yourself message me out of the blue, and then I'll hit you up and we have this type of conversation, like this whole thing kind of manifests itself. It's
100%.
very rare that ever happens, because anytime that I've ever called somebody, they're always like, yeah, this is Rick. It's like, yeah, hi Rick, you were messaging me on LinkedIn just now, and I was just trying to I just wanted to see like what you like, how we could maybe work with one another or something of that nature, right? And then he just like these, it happens all the time. People get so defensive. And it's just like, dude, like you're messaging me. Like if you didn't want to if you don't want me to call you, then don't message me I never asked you to message me. It's the same shit. It's people are so defensive, and I'm just like, my God, like it's just people don't the more that people are defensive through those mediums, is the more that shows me that people don't want to grow, that people don't want to network. They just want to be not even prideful, but egotistical. That's all they want to do.
Yeah.
Talk about them.
And they do that textbook thing, their textbook outreach, right? They use their software to connect with people. And did I share that with you? That was my outreach message was an automatic message.
No, I don't think so. I think yours was I think yours was actually genuine, because you were asking me questions like, so how do you, unless that's something that's in your back pocket, like, you know, what type of guests do you have? I don't get that as a normal response on my LinkedIn. Like that,
you gotta put a little bit of thought into that. And you gotta be open to, it was a prefactored message.
Oh shit. Well,
but I'm completely open and transparent with it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I was like, I freaking hate getting pitched on LinkedIn right away. This is the most horrible thing, right? But on the other hand, if I would manually reach out to 100 people every day, there's not enough time in a day
Yeah.
to do that. So how would I do that? How would I approach the person?
Yeah.
So I put some thought into it, and I've had nobody on the phone who thought that it was an automatic message.
Hell no.
And when I get a response, I'm excited for it. Like genuinely, when you called me, I was excited that you called me. I'm
That's
grateful, I'm
awesome.
thankful, and I engage. And but if I'd be defensive, and those people probably also send messages where most of the time they get pushback.
Yeah.
And I think I've sent over half a year, probably 6,000 messages,
Yeah.
and I got 4 people who were annoyed with me because it has to be authentic, but you can replicate authenticity.
Yeah.
It's like in my course, in my video course, all the videos are relevant, or every video is relevant to 90% of the people. Some people know a little bit, but I can also expect that those people who know a little bit already are excited about the refresher. And every single thing I teach is something that I use on a regular basis and that I'm congruent with and believe people should know. Heck, I think people should learn this in school, and nobody should need a coach for it.
But see,
That,
sometimes people don't even think about it because they don't think that they're even doing it. So at that point, they're literally self-sabotaging without even understanding that they're doing that.
yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
becoming an addict to cocaine and you have no idea. You're just purchasing a little bit more every day, but you have no idea that you're doing more of it because, well, a dime bag becomes 10 dime bags. Before you know it, it's like one of those, it's literally the same shit.
And I can stop it any day. I'm in full control. Yeah, it's 100%. 100%. And then also, and this is also a big part of coaching, people are unconsciously competent in certain things, but they only use that in a certain part of their life. Like, for example, you've used the words, it sounds like, it seems like, it looks like, probably thousands of times in your life in positive situations. But who thinks of using those things in stressful situations where we're loaded with cortisol and adrenaline and in fight or flight or freeze mode? Then we forget doing those things. So making those things conscious, then having the person try it consciously in those moments of conflict, having an experience of how that changed the conversation, and thus ingraining it into the conscious mind, because everything we do consciously is just programming our unconscious mind. And that's where we want to have everything. One of my favorite examples is driving a car. It's something we do completely unconscious. You just set an intention, right? And then your foot adjusts the pressure on the gas pedal, and your hands adjust the angle of the steering wheel. It's all unconscious. But you can do conscious driving as well. When you try to operate the pedals with your left foot. Have you ever tried that?
Yes, and it sucks. Like the left foot is only for the clutch. That's it.
It sucks. Exactly, it sucks because you accelerate too hard, you brake too hard, which is actually the most dangerous part.
Yep.
And doing that is conscious driving. That's how everybody started driving. And then when you do that a couple of times, then you slowly program it into your unconscious mind until it gets unconscious as well.
Yeah.
But that's a great example for how we operate from our unconscious mind. And we want to operate from our unconscious mind, because otherwise we would not be able to drive, eat, and be on the phone at the same time in the car.
Yeah, unless you're just damn good at multitasking.
Yeah, and multitasking only works for things that are in the unconscious mind. You can beat your heart, and you can breathe, and you can drive your car. You can do those things simultaneously, but you can't paint a picture and fry an egg.
Yeah, I agree with that.
You can only compartmentalize, or what is it called? You can switch from one to the other.
I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah.
But we also have to practice those unconscious mind things that we have to kind of get our mind to refresh all the time. Because if we get into this routine of this conscious, just kind of go with the flow of every day, we need to kind of, critical thinking of changing our, our self-conscious mind all the time, right?
Yeah. Otherwise, there's no improvement. Otherwise,
Yeah.
we would just start. They're like heart surgeons that do
Get
the same
started.
thing for 30 years and they haven't improved because they're just doing the same thing. And you have surgeons that just improve themselves over and over because they constantly try to get better and look at things and do things that they're not good at.
There's actually sorry, Adrian, go on. I
No, go ahead.
There's a thing that I told my love is that no, seriously, there's one thing I told her somewhat recent, whatever. It was that we're not here to revolve, we're here to evolve. Literally what you're talking about, but both of you are talking about right now is improvement and improving your knowledge, improving your skill. Practice comes with repetition. Repetition will allow for the improvement because you're doing it over and over and over again. And the whole thing is like whenever I told her that we evolve, not revolve. As long as we are evolving, we're getting better, then that's what we're aiming for in life. And her mind just got fucking blown. It was, and she straight up, it was very impressive. But anyways,
That's true because as long as when we don't grow, we decline. There's only one. There's no keeping the status quo, and that is so detrimental in relationships. Right? We grow the relationship. We in the beginning we date and we speak our love languages and we ask the person questions. We're curious. We want to know more and more and more. So we're in acquisition mode, and then at some point we go into maintenance mode and keep the status quo, and then we're surprised that the relationship diminishes because we need to stay in acquisition mode.
And it's not necessarily that it's wrong to fail because we're risking it. We're trying different new things because once you dive down, you understand how to adjust that, how to get better and how to improve from where you were instead of just kind of staying at this line that, we always have to risk it and improve if we fail and understand what we need to do better. And that's how we do get better. That's how we try new things. That's we try new jobs, new, professions and all that good stuff because we gotta keep trying to learn new abilities and skills.
And it's part of, for example, building habits. Even if you repeat the same thing, sometimes you fail in the same thing. And people that look from the outside go like, he did it 5 times right, and now he's doing 1 time wrong. Is he stupid or what? No, it's part of it. It's part of building the habit. It's part of seeing, it's part of learning how you can fail at those things. That's part of the learning. Then you know how you can fail. And if you've failed in a certain amount of times, then you can also teach it because you know how people will fail that try to do it, and you can help them circumvent that. Or when they do it, you know already how to help them fix it.
Yeah, I do like that saying of like, somebody's failing at something. You're like, wait, let me give it a try, even though I have no idea. But maybe that different view of, hey, maybe try this because I understand how you work. I understand your work ethic and understand how to work, but you're seeing it differently. You're not seeing the right, view or, perspective of you're overthinking it because you're very passionate about that thing that you're not seeing the right vision. And then, hey, I mean, it doesn't hurt to try. I love new tasks, new challenges. Who doesn't, right?
Absolutely.
So Arno, you've been doing the coach, just the coaching deal for relationships for how long now?
Since 2018.
2018. Yeah. And so you moved from Switzerland to California?
Yeah, in 2015.
2015. Wow. That is impressive, sincerely. So now you live here in Southern California.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's that's so like in your area, because you're like in the greater LA area, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like for you and your practice, how successful have you been in the area that you're in? Like, would you say that you've been moderately successful, that people are corporations and just, I don't know, companies and people and us all this are looking for someone like you, or how does that all?
It's interesting that you're saying that. So I definitely have clients here from the area.
Mm-hmm.
But most of my clients are from anywhere in the US. Sometimes even from I had a client from Australia, German clients, Canadian clients, and from Florida to Hawaii. And even local clients sometimes prefer to work via Zoom because they want to save the 20-minute drive.
Yeah. Especially in that area that you're in, it's like 20-minute easily becomes an hour. So
Yeah. Yeah, and you can be just as effective via Zoom.
yeah.
That's what I was gonna ask. But what about like, do you read like body language and how they connect with each other? Does that make a difference or no?
Um, few things drop through the cracks. I'm pretty sure, but essentially it's just as effective. And even the deep subconscious work, helping people overcome emotional baggage, overcome persistent negative emotions, PTSD, things like that, works perfectly via Zoom.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Yeah. I also think it's always like the trauma you had as children that we don't, overcome. And now as adults, we, take that upon ourselves and take it towards our partners sometimes, and without unconsciously do it, right?
absolutely unconscious, and we pass it on. And one of my favorite stories about that is they did an experiment with mice, and they had those mice smell sandalwood, and mice don't care about sandalwood, but then they administered electric shocks every time those mice smelled the sandalwood, so they thoroughly traumatized those mice, so they would show a panic response when smelling sandalwood. Then they had those mice have a beautiful rest of their lives and have baby mice, and then they had the baby mice just have beautiful lives and have grandchildren mice. And then they exposed the grandchildren mice to the smell of sandalwood. And the grandchildren mice panicked. They had never smelled sandalwood. They've never had an electric shock. They didn't even get an electric shock in that moment. But that emotional baggage was passed on, was passed down through the generations. And in my work, I help people overcome this generational baggage. So it's really profound.
Yeah. I've also seen an experience just like that about the monkeys in the ladder and trying to get the bananas, and they're like, "Don't you dare, because we're all gonna get soaked," or something around those lines of how it's just a constant of passing on those baggages and stuff. Yeah.
And that's a fantastic example. I sometimes work with people, and when I go into that release process, I ask if you were to know, was the root cause before, during, or after your birth? And the first time I heard that question, I was like, "Oh, that woo woo. That's pretty woke shit." I mean,
That's a deep question right there.
That's esoteric.
Oh, yeah.
What about that? And then the mouse the mouse story helped me understand that a little bit. But then I worked with two different women. I asked them, the root cause of this emotion is that was that before, during, after your birth, and one said before birth, and one said at birth. And I said, okay, how long before birth? And she said 3 months. And I said, okay, what happened there? Well, my parents realized that I was a girl and they wanted to have a boy. And the other woman said, oh yeah, that was at birth when they saw that they had a girl and not a boy. And I don't know if that's true, right? I don't know if the unconscious fetus if the fetus had that experience and understood it, or if the human then created that story and ingrained that in their unconscious mind. But I don't care. I work with their truth and their beliefs, and then release that, because it's their truth that keeps the trauma in check.
Even I'll be right back.
Yeah, even if someone has an experience and we go into the reality of things and we find a video recording and we find that everything was completely different, that doesn't change anything for the trauma in the person, because their experience created the trauma and it still needs to be released.
Yeah, I understand, because some people do believe that like they were born this way, in a sense of, well, my parents lack this and they don't like me or they hate me, when it's not that. It's the relationship between the parents that were not working, and they think it's, oh, it's that's my fault. That's why my parents hate each other, and that's why they got divorced, because it was my fault. I wasn't supposed to be born, and all this self-conscious mind that they already feel negative, or they have to rebel and do all these things because, well, they don't care, or I was never supposed to be here, in a sense. And it's all those truths in their head, because it's all the belief, that
Yeah.
self-conscious you have, that faith of that, you know, for a fact it is, which is not true, but we do whatever we believe in, is it is true.
Yeah. It's there's this movie, Inside Out, this Pixar movie. Have you ever
Oh
seen
yeah,
it?
I love that movie. I always reference it with my wife. I'm
Yeah.
like, think about it. Like,
Yeah.
even sadness is a great thing. It's okay to be sad.
It's if it creates movement, right? If it creates movement, it's good. And what
Yes.
came to mind right now is, you remember that scene where they're riding the train of thought, and they topple over
Forget land or
two
something.
boxes. They have two boxes, and one says facts and one says opinion, and they're both stones that look all the same, and they all
Oh
get
yeah,
jumbled. And she goes like, "Oh no, facts and opinions. They look so alike." And
it's
it's
true.
the same. Beliefs, facts, opinions. It's something that they're all true to us.
Yes, I actually love that movie because it's very true, in a sense that we do have those feelings that overcome us, and
Yeah.
like the anger over, obviously, just whenever it wants to just overcome it, it overcomes us. I always tell my wife, I'm like, you're when you get angry, like especially like road rage. I hate this, and my wife does this all the time. Like, she's driving and she's like, this a-hole and this blah blah blah. I'm like, you're only hurting yourself by letting that person get into you and bothering you when they're not doing anything. Well, why can't you just slow down, let them in? And why it just bugs you, it irritates you, stresses you, gives you anxiety for no reason. They're not
Yeah.
trying to. They're and
And there's usually some kind of emotional baggage behind that, because road rage is absolutely inappropriate, right?
yes,
But when we have emotional baggage, then we have an appropriate amount of frustration in the moment,
mm-hmm.
and that's cool. But if it reminds us of a dramatic, uh, traumatic situation in the past, then those emotions get stacked on top of it, and then the overall emotional response is blown out of proportion, and then the physical response is likely to be blown out of proportion as well. And having compassion for that, and knowing, hey, that person right now who's so angry, who's yelling at me, who's calling names, that
Yeah,
person is not sniper shooting at me right now. I'm just happening to be close to that explosion, and it's not directed at me.
I
They're
like
just
that.
expressing their frustration.
You're close to the explosion, so you're just getting all of that.
The
Yeah, because
shrapnel.
yeah, I always tell I always tell myself, I'm like, they're just having a bad day. Imagine you lost your job, you lost a family member, where you just want to just blow it out, or get out of my way, out of frustration. And it's just like, we're just in their way, just let them by. It's not hurting me. I don't want to let them to, bug me or hurt me in any ways. Sometimes you're just in a rush. You just gotta let them by. I'm not in a rush. There's no need to come on by.
No.
Oh, I love it. I love this
Yeah.
conversation. Always, it was always about that, the five love languages, like I'm sure you understand. And but I don't think it's concrete. I think we always adjust, and we always seek different love languages. So like, I think it's always an adjustment that we always in a relationship, we always have to adjust, just like in anything, that we have to understand the situation, understand where we're at, and what we seek, and later in our life, especially when we're younger, we seek different, and now that we get it, like, okay, we have a different understanding what we like, what we want from our partner, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And the five love languages are a fantastic model
Yeah.
for expressing appreciation.
Yes.
But it is a model, and you need to, and one is, you need to think outside of the box, because there are ways to appreciate the other person that might be very important and significant to them, which is hard to fit into the model of the five love languages. For example, when I approach my wife, it means a lot to me if she puts down what she's doing right now and turns to me and listens to me. That's what I try to do to her. But what is that? Is that quality time? You can make that an aspect of quality time. For example, you can make it an aspect of words of appreciation. And the other thing is the toxicity to it, because you can also say, hey, can you do this and that for me? Not right now. I'm going to do that later. Oh, but my love language is acts of service, so you don't love me anymore. And that has happened.
Yeah.
That happens to people. So
Yeah.
relationship advice always goes two ways. Every single piece of relationship advice. One is, I understand, I speak your love language now, so you feel loved, and I understand your love language now, so I feel loved when you say that. Gifts, for example, don't mean a lot to me, but I know they mean a lot to my wife. So when she gifts me something, I know that that is a token of love, and I
Of course.
make it meaningful to me. And I can't just say, yeah, thanks, but can you touch me?
Yeah, yeah. It's like I don't really care for this, but thank you. I understand. No, I think it was for new relationships. It's great, like you said, it's a great model to understand what we really want from our partner, because sometimes we don't seek it. And it's like, how do I explain that? I hate that you know, don't pay attention to me, or you don't touch me, or you don't do certain things. When this model is like, I kind of understand what this is going. Like, I really do notice that sometimes you just want me to talk and to give you your full attention to certain things. I think that's a great starting model for all relationships, and it's nice. There's a lot of good models. What's your go-to besides the 5 love languages? Other books and models, theories?
Yeah, so there are a couple of great books like John Gottman's work, as it's science-based. I really like that. There's a book called the Seven Principles of Making a Marriage Work. There's a lot
Oh,
of
yes.
golden stuff in that one. There's a great audio book, Celebrating Partnership by Alison Armstrong.
Mm.
A lot of very valuable stuff in that, and it's entertaining too. It's a great book to listen to together with your
Yeah.
wife if she's interested in that stuff. And then a lot of stuff outside of relationships. For example, The Happiest Toddler on the Block, a book about bringing up raising a toddler, obviously. But there's so many truths in that. As to, for example, tell the person in front of you what you want them to do and not what you don't want them to do. Like my son, for example, when he was like 2 years old, he was climbing on everything. And then my daughter, she's 1, she climbs on everything. So when I tell her to climb down, when I tell her to stop, there might be a little stop for a moment and then she continues. If I ask to climb down and she just starts to get that she then actually climbs down. And we need to speak in that way with our partners, being specific and saying what we would like them to do, but also with ourselves. Because even when we do something that we know is not good and we tell ourselves to stop, we need to speak with our inner child and tell our inner child what to do instead, and master our state of being in an empowered way. So
Yeah, that's another thing. I mean, we don't have children, and I know Damian doesn't have children either. But that's another thing that's a huge milestone from the relationship between the partners of raising a child. And I think that worries me at times, because not just my wife's physical and her mental side of how draining and how tough it is for a woman to give birth, but how we're going to raise the children. What are we going? What's our principles, our values of what our children are supposed to do, and how to? Because I'm not a very, I'm learning education. I'm learning all these child books of what to, what not to do, and I don't want to be that helicopter parent to always be like, don't do that, like you said, don't do that, don't do this, instead of like, hey, you might fall or something, let's do something else. And it's just a simple distraction, simple kind of getaway. Let's do this instead of always trying to scare them and frighten them when it's not good. And it's also better for them to learn from themselves. When they fall, they won't do it again.
yeah, and what you want to do with kids is you want to help them create, you want to give them inner representations. You want to give them the right inner representations, because all words that you use create inner representations for them anyway. And if you say don't fall, what's the inner representation? Falling. Most accidents in restaurants happen around those signs that say careful, the floor is wet.
Yeah.
Around the signs is where the accidents happen. Although the floor is wet everywhere. So telling them to be careful instead of don't fall.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
It's a mental. It's like when people are saying when you're skiing down a mountain with a bunch of trees, you don't look at the trees. You look at the path you want to go, because once you look at the trees, you're gonna go straight to the tree, right? Just like you're saying, like, you know, the signs that you think about it. You try not to do those things or
I love that metaphor, because on the other hand, you see in the desert there are those telephone poles every 300 feet, and you see a cross. So someone had a space of 600 feet, and he found the pole. Why? Because he was like, not the pole, not the pole, not the pole. Boom. And exactly as that, the skier, the snowboarder goes, stay on the path, stay on the path, stay on the path, stay on the path. And your conscious thinking, your conscious mind is the goal setter, and the unconscious mind is the goal achiever, and it does it very, very precise.
Yeah, we shouldn't worry about what to do instead of what not to do. What, you know, the don'ts. As I tell my wife all the time, like, let's not worry what could happen. You know, let's worry about what our goal is, what our, you know, our path is on the way. Like, if for some reason there's bumps on the road, so be it. We gotta get through those instead of thinking like, well, if this happens, is what are we gonna do? It's like, well, let's not worry about it. If it does happen, let's try to hopefully not go through those bumps in the roads, right?
Yeah, and it depends on our level of anxiety, how much we focus on this and that. And anxiety is an expectation. And again, the unconscious mind tries to fulfill the expectations. So anxiety is a risk factor in itself. But then on the other hand, when we have anxiety, a person with anxiety has a hard time to get out of it. So being compassionate in that moment. And my wife can be anxious, and I can't make it stop. It's not in my circle of influence.
Yeah, that's the thing I understood to not do until, like, can you stop worrying? Can you stop me being this way? When I was like, I understand you have anxiety, I understand you have worry, and I'll try to calm her down, understand that everything's going to be okay, instead of telling her not to worry, not to do these things.
What's powerful is if you ask her, how would you like things to go when we're through that situation, and then they're visualizing a positive outcome, and that lowers the anxiety.
Good. That's
powerful.
Let me get my pen right now. It's down.
All right,
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, and you guys, I have to hop off. Actually, I just didn't see how quick the time went by. Jesus.
Yeah. That's how, dude, that's how these go. Like, you just get into the conversations before you know it. It's like, you know, it literally time flies. So yeah, man.
Well, I'm sorry I got here a little late, Arno. I appreciate it. I at least got a little into this conversation in this podcast. It was a pleasure meeting you. Hope to see you again. Damian, I appreciate you.
Yeah, and if you want to do another one of these, Arno, we're definitely welcome to do that. Just let me know what time and day works best for you, and then we can go ahead, and because I'm sure you have stuff that you want to ask us as well. So because I know that when we last spoke on the phone, you had said that you wanted to ask us some questions too. So because I know it's kind of like we've been trying to understand a little bit more of you and internally and kind of background and all that stuff, and I'm sure you got the same.
Pick your brain. You got to pick your brain.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it was a great talk, and I'm 100% open to doing it again. And we have hours to fill, right?
Yeah, no, seriously, that's really how it goes. But yeah, dude, let me know when and if you want to go ahead and do another one, and we'll definitely go from there for sure. And it'll just be free flowing, just like this one was, for sure.
Yeah,
awesome. That's beautiful.
Absolutely.
You guys, yeah.
All right, man. Well, you have a great evening, and hopefully have a great rest of your day today, man.
You too. Thank you so much. Take care, and we'll schedule another one.
Yes, sir.
All right.